Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and as an uncle, I have seen this very fine line between not having iPad children, but also all the incredible benefits that technology can offer to children. And that's why I'm so excited that we're joined by an incredible innovator and fellow entrepreneur for today's episode, because I'm speaking as an uncle, which is the easiest job in the world, but we're joined by a dad entrepreneur who is bringing a solution to the world that, holy cow, it is definitely so much needed. And I love the intention and strategy that he's put behind it as he has founded this incredible company. And you'll see this creation that he's bringing into the world. So let me introduce you to today's guest and fellow entrepreneur. His name is Dhruv Chadha. Dhruv is the founder of Ahmi, which is an intelligent device built to help parents raise confident, capable kids in a world where technology is everywhere. Before Ahmi, Dhruv works across the tech ecosystem, from building smartphones at Blackberry and Microsoft to leading software for connected cars. One of the products he's most proud of leading was the Sync Up Kids Watch at T-Mobile, which became the #1 selling kids smartwatch when they launched it. But after becoming a parent himself, Dhruv started to feel what every parent eventually does, that technology isn't helping parents be the parents that they want to be. It becomes a distraction at a certain point. So that's why Dhruv focused on building technology that supports early childhood development instead of competing with it. I'm so excited to hear this backstory and for everyone to become so aware of the amazing things that Dhruv has built into his solution. So I'm excited about this one. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Dhruv Chadha. All right, Dhruv, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
Heck yes, you have such a cool background. I'm so excited to hear how it's all culminated, obviously, in this amazing business that you're building. So let's start with you personally. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Dhruv? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
That's a good question. I've always been, interested in technology and building products that people love. And that's why I started working on mobile phones when it was, 2005 and 6. And that's when really I started looking at technology and say, how can we help people? And I was a big part of the mobile revolution, thinking about how do we make people's life easier. And that's what led me to my journey. And over time, I've always built products that, fulfill a need for the customer. And that's sort of my strong suit, is like looking at people, how they're living, what are the pain points they're, seeing in their daily lives, and how can we build products that actually help them achieve a better way of living.
Yeah, I love that overview, especially because you heard it at the very top of this episode, how I tease the fact that nobody wants to raise iPad kids. That is definitely a term that is one that us societally, we know that that's not the direction that we want to go in. But with your technological background, I mean, none of us can ignore really the fact that technology can and should be helping in so many different ways. So Dhruv, with that hat on, you've got to introduce us to Ahmi and all the things that you've built into that, and really that philosophy behind it as well.
Yeah, the story goes way back, when it was 2016 and I had just left Microsoft and I was working at a startup. But I was looking at how people use phones, and I was telling my wife, did we build the right thing? And I was always reflecting on, could we have done better in how we build these devices? And then, I got a chance to work at T-Mobile leading the Sync Up Kids Watch. And I really learned what parents want. They want to raise safe kids and confident kids. And we were like, hey, how do we help a parent who can still give the kids freedom, even though parents worry about where their kids are? And that's what the Sync Up Kids Watch really is. It allows you to see where your child is. You can call them. You have a way to make sure that who can actually call the watch and who cannot call the watch. So you can really put some boundaries around how they use the watch and who can reach the child. And then I had my own kids. In 2022 during COVID, I had my son, and then he's growing up. And, we're busy parents. Me and my wife, we both work full-time jobs. And I was like, I want to teach my kids good habits. I want to make sure that he understands how to use technology in a very mindful way. And when I looked around to look at products I needed, I couldn't find them. And this really came to life, when my child was 3.5, 4, and he got a weather board. And the weather board had these things like, oh, this is the weather for today. These are the days of the week. But he could not read them. And he was like, how make sense of this weather board. And if I was not in the room, there's no way that he could learn. And like, we all want our kids to sort of self-learn in some ways, but we need technology that can help them in those aspects. So that's where I was like, wait, what if the board could speak to him even when I was not present? So the learning can continue even if I can't be in the room. And that's really where this idea sparked. And that's where Ahmi started to build out. And I can talk more about that as we go in the conversation.
Yeah, I love that overview, and especially that real life example with your son of the weather board, because I'm going to call something out that I hear. Obviously, as an uncle, it's way easier than being a parent, Dhruv. I know that for sure. But what I'm always amazed anytime I get to hang out with my niece and nephew is they want to learn. They actually, because of a child's natural curiosity, that curiosity leads them in the direction of, oh my gosh, I want to know more. And you're right. Historically, if there was no adult nearby, we can't satisfy that curiosity. And so we live in this beautiful era where there's technology. Obviously, AI has made so many more things possible. There's so much that goes into it. So why can't your son learn more about the weather, the days of the week, all of those things, even when no adult is nearby? And really, I'm going to perfectly segue for you because I love the intention in which you've put behind Ahmi, because it's so many different things all in one. You take a baby monitor, a sound machine, a nightlight, a music player, a learning hub. We all have these things in any family's household, but it's 7 or 8 different pieces of technology, and I would imagine that most of them don't actually benefit the kids. I've never raised a kid, but I would imagine the kid doesn't really care all that much about what their baby monitor is doing and where it is in their room. So talk to us about how you formulated all of this into one device that actually makes a difference.
That's a great question. So when I had this realization of, why can't this weatherboard talk to my child, right? So I started talking to more parents. We interviewed 50 plus parents and said, okay, walk me through what your day looks like. Walk me through your morning routine. What devices do you have in the kids' room? And the funny part was I asked a lot of parents, hey, walk into your child's room. What smart devices do you have in your kids' room? Oh, we don't use technology with our kids. I'm like, okay, what's plugged into a wall? And then they start saying, there's a camera, there's a sound machine, there's a nightlight, there's a Yoda player that plays music. So I'm like, oh, so you have multiple products that you are using. And they're like, oh yeah, I do use more than 4 or 5 products with my kids, but I'm managing them all. I'm making sure that the sound machine is running at night and then turning off in the morning. And it's a manual process. The camera, make sure the camera's aimed correctly. Make sure that my kid can play music on their charged devices and making sure that they're charged. So parents have the struggle of keeping up with the devices in the kid's room. And then when it comes to learning, they're like, oh, I have to go back to paper and pen. And it's a great example where, to teach my kids routines, we tried routine charts and they weren't working. My kids are seeing us as parents use laptops and iPads and iPhones. And they're like, you want me to use the routine chart on the wall? And I asked the parents, and like, yeah, the routine charts don't work for us. Kids are not interested in it. So we're like, okay, how do we build a product that makes sure that we can have these features in it, but also help the parent in that journey of learning, and also make sure the kids have some boundary where they don't have the impacts of screen time. And that's how we kind of started to learn about, okay, what are the pain points for parents, and how do we combine these things to really build a product that helps the parent in the journey of parenthood, right? And I'll give you an example now. The camera can be a product that can be used for monitoring the child when they're below 18 months, 20 months, but it can also be an augmented reality product that actually looking around and saying, okay, this is a toy, and gives you some data back about that toy or some shape, right? We can use camera for augmented learning. And that's what we believe a product can do. It can actually change what it's doing as the child is getting older. And that's what Ahmi does with its sensors. For the first 18 months of the life, it is your nanny cam, sound machine, and your nightlight. But at 20, 25 months, we can start doing things like shapes and colors and alphabets and numerics. And we can start bringing these learning moments into the product using the screen. So the software is always adapting to the child and where they are in their growth journey. And I really call this the iPhone moment of parenting tech. There is so much tech for parents right now, but they solve like one problem at a time, and they don't work cohesively. And our goal is, how do we make this stuff work cohesively? How you sleep impacts how your day goes. So all of these things are linked together, and we are going to link these patterns of the day for the parent, so they don't have to think about it. In the morning at 7 a.m., the sound machine goes off, and we play some bird chirping sounds, and we can have the routine shown up on the board already ready for when the child wakes up with the parent. They have a visual to go and say, okay, this is the routine for this morning. And that's how we think about the product.
I love that, Dhruv, especially because really it is a product also that grows with the child. I think that's something that is really cool. And I definitely want to talk both software and hardware with you today. But before we get there, Dhruv, you said something that I want to go deeper into, because I feel like we can't talk about your type of product without talking about the market, because obviously that's an essential ingredient for any product going to market. And Dhruv, you called out one thing that I've noticed is kind of a badge of honor for some parents. Some parents like to brag, oh no, we don't use technology. And one, you already called out the fact that pretty much every household is using technology these days. But two, I think about the downsides of that as well. So a lot of people, if they see the way that I work behind a computer, and you're way more tech savvy than I am, I'm sure you're even more so than I am in this regard. But when people see me and they're just like, holy cow, how are you so comfortable on any computer that you sit at? The answer is because for one reason or another, my parents let me have a computer in my bedroom when I was like 10 or 11 years old. And so I was just on the computer way more than other kids my age. And Dhruv, I would imagine the gap is even wider these days because there's more tools and more tech than when you and I were kids. I mean, I had this huge bulky computer in my bedroom. We did not have a laptop. That came so much later. So what's your take on that as far as parenting and obviously balancing? Well, there are benefits here, and we do want to use technology. It's not a badge of honor to say, hey, we never use technology here.
Yeah, I think the goal is to use technology to, be a tool for you as a parent. One thing we are very careful about is that we are not here to replace the parent. We are here to help the parent and actually bring the child and parent closer. And the way we think about it is that, parenting is two parts. It's process of parenting. It's like, oh, I'm making sure that I do all of these things. I build the routine chart for my child, make sure they have a schedule, all of these things. And then there is the companionship of parenting. The problem today is that parents have so much going on that the process of parenting takes over their life. It stresses them out. Parents are feeling burnout, and they don't have time for companionship. And that's where Ahmi comes in. It's a technology piece that helps you make the process of parenting easier, so you have more time for companionship. And we're not saying that we'll just build the same product for everyone. Like, the parent can customize the routine for their family. So we give you like a foundation that you can use that then becomes the tool that brings you time back, so you can have more time for companionship. I'll give you an example of how this worked out for us as I built this product out, because my kids are my first users. The routine chart is a great example. So we built the routine chart using our software stack, and we published it on an in-house tablet that we have. And my kids would now do the routine very effectively in the evening. And before that, I would not go for a bike ride with my child because I know the routine's a problem, right? Because ask any parent, evening routines, they're like, oh man, it's going to take me an hour to do the bath time, to change the clothes, to brush the teeth. I'm not going for a bike ride. But because I know that my kids were now wanting to do the routine because they feel like they're in charge of their own routine, which is the goal, we actually could go for a half-hour bike ride. I was never worried that when I come home, my kids will not do the routine, because they would do the routine really well. That means I save half an hour from the routine, and now I can go out for a bike ride with my son. So I actually got more outdoor time because I'm using technology as a tool to help me with the process of parenting.
Dang, I love that real life example, Dhruv, because to me, that's the fun part about entrepreneurship is, sure, you and I are talking about a product, you and I are talking about a solution that you're bringing to the marketplace, but it's the impacts of this stuff. It's the impact of innovation that changes actual lives. And that's such a real tangible story that we can bite our teeth into and realize, holy cow, this makes life better. This makes childhoods better. This makes parenting better. It really is that key that unlocks all of that. And I think really what you just shared there unlocks and leads us to the next part of the conversation that I've been excited to hear your thought process for, just because you've worked on so many cool devices even before Ahmi. In your professional career, you worked on so many cool different types of tech projects. So I've got to ask you, a lot of people might be thinking, well, Dhruv, why isn't this just a software tool? Why isn't this just an iPad app that we can incorporate into iPads? Why that marriage between software and hardware? Because it's obviously such a powerful thing. I wish we could show listeners Ahmi right now, but obviously they're mostly just listening to us. So we'll have to use words here, but why software and hardware together?
That's a great point and great question. So we knew this question would come up. So as any product person, you first experiment and learn with your customers. And so we built Ahmi as an app. We published Ahmi as a routine app, and you can use that app from the App Store and use it on any tablet. And it has things like, publishing an automatic routine at 7 a.m. or 6:30 p.m. in the evening for the nighttime routine. It has things like learning the day of the week, the weather. So we have some of the features we plan to have in the product. And our parents would use it, but for 2 weeks, and then they would stop using it. And I'm like, oh, why? Like, clearly they're seeing some benefit in the product, but then they stop using it for 2 weeks. So when I talk to these parents, they're like, well, the problem is it's on an iPad. I got to still have this discussion with my kid that don't swipe away while using the Ahmi app. And kids are very fast at swiping away on their iPads and going towards content that is passive content consumption, which is meant to be this whole distracting content of, watching videos, YouTube, whatever else that kind of takes their attention. And we saw this multiple times. And parents were like, hey, can you be proactive? Can you at 6:30 p.m. take over the iPad screen? It's time for evening routine and just show it to my child. I'm like, no, we can't do that if you're a product on another ecosystem like the iPad or the Android tablets. And so parents really want boundaries to exist. And so do I. Like, I think the biggest problem we have with iPads and Android tablets is screen time. And when people say screen time, what they really mean is passive content consumption. I want to be very clear. Like, the goal of our product is to remove screen time. So we have no screen time content. And that's why our own hardware and software together, we can control the full stack. That means as a parent, you can pick which childhood apps that we have in our library the child can see, number one. Number two, you can create a rhythm that says 7:30 p.m., screens off, the nightlight comes on. You can't do that on an iPad. And then we're also then meshing software and AI and hardware together, which then works very well for the parents' benefit. So really, we're giving a ground for kids to learn how to use technology in a very intentional way from a very early age. Because the goal, if you teach the kids how to use technology and they do get their iPhone or iPad at age 13 with a full open ecosystem, they have learned and understood that technology is a tool to help me before it starts to consume me.
Dhruv, hearing you talk about that, I almost feel like it's also a parenting superpower, and it makes the parents' life way easier, because it almost sounds to me, and obviously the device is very cool. I'm excited for listeners to check it out. We're going to drop links at the end of today's conversation. But what I picture, the way you talk about it and those boundaries that you keep talking about and the rules we can set up, is that it's almost like this thing turns into a transformer. Is the kids will start to understand, oh, I don't get to play with this thing after 6 o'clock at night, because then it literally just turns into a nightlight. Like, that is so much easier, which also in turn teaches the routines, teaches the schedules, teaches discipline. And really, I would imagine it takes away some of the negotiations that I know happens with regards to parenting. So it's really cool. I've got to ask you this. I feel like it just pops up in any and all tech conversations. How much is AI playing into this? Because we all see as business owners how much it opens doors for us. Where's AI factoring into the world of Ahmi, whether it's within the actual product or within your development of the product?
Yeah. So, we look at AI as an enabler for us to build product and content for the parent, right? So, for example, we use AI to help the parent with, I'm creating a routine for my child who's 4.5. Where do I start? Well, we recommend a routine based on what we see within our ecosystem and even outside. What are the recommended routines for a 4.5-year-old? We use AI for that kind of data. We can use AI to kind of personalize the content for each child. And I'll give you a really good example. We're building out and working, on building lesson plans or learning for kids who are learning math. And it's very basic, learning counting numbers, right? Let's look at that example. It's the same counting numbers, whether it's my son or my daughter. But my daughter loves different things than my son does. My son is really into cars. So now I can personalize that counting numbers with cars, so he's bound to pay more attention. So you can personalize learning to each child's interest, and that's where AI plays a role for us. And then also we're looking at multiple different factors of data that we can, understand the child very deeply and answer questions for the parent. So parents like, hey, my kid's going through a sleep regression. How do I help them? Well, we know how their routine goes. We know what time they sleep. We know what time they wake up. We can give you a better targeted answer than you going online and searching, how do I help my child with sleep regression? Because the internet or even any other AI doesn't know your child. And I think that's what plays a role in understanding how to help the parent and how to help the child in their growth journey.
That said, this is a bit of a selfish question I'm going to ask you while we're on the air together, because truth be told, I've always wondered this about product creators such as yourself. how do you, also, I'll kind of preface this question with the fact that I'm a Tesla owner for a long time now. And the thing that I think is the coolest about Teslas is that the car that I bought the day that I got it is different from the car that I own now, because Tesla always leaves room open for further innovation and further over-the-air enhancements. And I think that's incredible. I wish every device that we had in our lives, like I wish my computer monitor could innovate itself as well and get better over time. Obviously, that doesn't happen. In your world, is that possible? Is that something you think about?
That is very much what we think about, right? Because I want this product to be something where, as a parent, I have one product that I buy when my child is born, and then I keep it until the first 6 years. And the child and software are evolving, and the software is evolving as my child's getting older and giving me the right things to help them. For example, at 3 years old, actually at 4 years old, my child does have a calendar. Like, you can see he has karate on Thursday evening, he has hockey on Saturday morning. He can visualize that content. But at 6 years old, he can now move these things on his own in the calendar. So the software, number one, is opening up capabilities to my child as they're getting older, which is awesome because they're learning how to use the calendar effectively and build executive functioning skills in the process. But we can also keep now, as we learn what technology can do, we can push down new updates and new modules to the parent. So instead of buying a lot of devices in the first 6 years of the child's journey, you buy one device and the software is evolving with you as we learn more about how to use technology in a way that works for kids and give you the right tools for you as a parent.
That is so cool. I love hearing that. And I think that also loops back into our software versus hardware, or software with hardware part of the conversation. I think that that's especially key there, because you're right. I think about when my brother had kids, gosh, by the time the kids were 2, he had a whole new set of products that they were using along the way. So it's really cool to hear your insights there. Dhruv, I've got to ask you this. I'm very impressed by all the things that you're doing, and I'm really appreciative of the way that you're sharing your thought process with us here in this conversation. But as an entrepreneur for 17 years now, I also know how many things you have to think about on a day-to-day and especially a weekly basis, because you're not just designing and engineering this, you're also running your business. And I think it's so brilliant the way that you already have it open. If parents want to be the first to land a version of Ahmi, your website already has a marketing campaign going on, and you've already got that roadmap of what things look like from here. You're obviously thinking about marketing. You're obviously thinking about market penetration. You've already shared insights about how you're getting inside the minds of parents and interviewing them and learning from them. So what does the day-to-day look like in the life of Dhruv to manage all of this while developing a product, but also growing a business?
And 2 little kids who are 3 and 5. It's a lot.
That's true.
But it keeps going with having a strong team. My co-founders are awesome. Chris, helps on the hardware side. My wife is one of the co-founders, and she helps with community building. But really compartmentalizing my days on what I work on is really important. And I leverage AI very heavily in my workflows. I think, this term called AI native companies. Before I started my startup, I didn't know what that meant. But now I know what it means, because I use AI to augment my skill set of a particular area and then just go really, really fast. So I segment my days into like, hey, the morning is creation time, the evening is meeting time. And then I kind of segment what I'm going to work on each day of the week with different things. So one day of the week, I'm working on dev. I'm actually building the product and coding our software, the 0.1 version of it, right? And then the next day, I'm doing marketing and saying, okay, how do I target the ads on Facebook? Should I be doing ads? Should I be doing some other content work? Then the third day, I'm talking to parents, because you have to keep talking to your customer to understand, okay, are we building the right thing? Are we resonating with the customer base we're building for? And then on Thursday and Friday, I'm also talking to advisors, because look, we're building a product that has not been done before. We're building a product for kids. I understand the responsibility that has on us. So we do talk to child psychologists. What does technology mean? What are the things we should be thinking about, being very careful about? I'm a parent and technology person first. I'm not an expert in, child psychology. So having those inputs and those people on the journey with us is really, really important. And those help us drive decisions into the product.
Yes, I love that. Honestly, batch productivity. Dhruv, I feel like you just shared with listeners one of the secrets to getting things done in life and in business, because if you're switching gears so many times, which we have to, we all have so many different responsibilities, but batching it and saying, okay, this morning I'm just working on development. That is so brilliant. It took me a long time to arrive at batch productivity. So I'm super grateful for you sharing that with our listeners. The other thing that I always love to ask engineers and product developers and designers such as yourself is, you all have such a clear roadmap in your head about how you're going to develop the product, what features are coming out, how you're prioritizing all of that. I always love extrapolating that and getting inside of your roadmap business wise as well. What sort of timeline do you picture? Because I think it's really cool how clear Ahmi is about, hey, mid 2026, here's what we're launching, here's what you can expect. What is that time horizon that you look at when you sit down to look at both the product and your business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, it's a lot of experience. Like, I've been building hardware and IoT products along with my co-founder for a while, so we understand what it takes to get to production. And our current target, which is what we see on the website, is mid 2026. But the reality is we're building from scratch, so it might shift as we learn more, and it might adjust. But based on experience of how we build software and hardware, we kind of have an idea of where we would get to. And the second part is we're seeing what parents need today. How do we get that to them as soon as possible? Should we launch the app-only version of our product? We could, and we decide those decisions based on how far we are from, number one, building the hardware. Number two, our parents' appetite for using an iPad for learning. Some parents are okay with that, and they could use our app on those platforms. So we're thinking at all of these metrics and feedback from customers to decide what's important. And then what goes into our planning flow is really looking at parents saying, where do they need the most help? How do we build the MVP product that satisfies our customer needs in the most pressing way possible? Because, like you said, you can have 10 features, but I can't wait for all the 10 features to be ready before we ship. So we look at the MVP based on the impact we would have on our customers' lives, and then decide with those features and go with those first.
I love that. Dhruv, I'm totally going to put you on the spot here because you've given a shout out to your team a few times, and that is a superpower when we're building anything that's going to have the reach and the impact as much as something like Ahmi is going to do. What does that team environment look like, especially in these early days? I think it's so exciting because probably all of you have so many different ideas, and you all are out in the world getting even more ideas from other external factors and inputs. How are you guys as a team internally making sense of that? What does your meeting flow look like? What are the questions you're asking of each other? I'd love to get some of those real life insights.
That's a very, very important question that I've learned over my time, is how to pick who the right people are to work with you, right? So I think you have to pick people who, number one, have an expertise in an area. My expertise is in product and experiences. I'm the guy who can go and figure out what the customer needs and what would look nice and how the flow would work for the customer from a software perspective. Chris, on the other hand, is the hardware person. Like, he knows how to build hardware because he was on the team that built the Fire TV stick. He's worked on GoPros. So he has this very depth knowledge of hardware. So when it comes to a hardware question, I'm like, hey, Chris, you got it. Because we know we all have an expertise that we bring to the team, we let that person own that decision-making process. Otherwise, we'll never make progress. I'm not in every decision. I trust people in the right places who have the expertise to make the decision to go forward. My wife is actually building out a podcast series called the Connected Childhood Podcast. And we talk about how can you raise kids in a connected world, because the world will not be connected. But I trust her to find who the right audience is that we should be, the right speakers are for that podcast and who we should be talking to. And she runs that. So we have a bi-weekly meeting as a team where to come together and say, okay, what's happening in each workflow, but the flows are occurring on parallel and each person is responsible for driving their own path in some way.
Yes. Oh, Dhruv, I love those insights because the key word there, ownership. Lately, I've been reading a lot about the way that Spotify, for example, works, and they believe in giving full teams full ownership of product features, full ownership of what it is that they're doing from the very beginning to the very launch of that thing that they're working on. And I think that's such a brilliant way to structure it. Dhruv, I've just got one final question for you. It's the one question I ask at the end of every episode, and it's super broad, so you can take it in any direction you want. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners, knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and also knowing that you are one of us, you're a fellow entrepreneur? What's that one thing you want to leave them with today?
entrepreneurship is hard, but if you have a passion for an area and the drive to do it, you can. Like anyone can go do it. You have to build the skill sets and the toolbox to do that. And I'm going to give you one today. Actually, you talked about this teamwork and how do you give team empowerment. There's this thing called Empower Teams. And Marty Kagan has written really good articles on how to build product teams. So if you're working at a company and want to still work like an entrepreneur within a company, those principles apply even outside of being an entrepreneur. You can actually do that within the context of a larger company. So I think, again, having the right tool sets and giving the direction and making sure that everyone has a task to play on the team and they're empowered to make decisions and drive change, that's the main part. Again, I think just jump in and go do what you're passionate about. And if you see a real problem and you can quantify it, I think it's worth pursuing those problems.
Yes, so well said. Ooh, I love that advice because, Dhruv, you're also practicing what you preach. And I think there's so much power and so much value in that. And I'll tell you this, as someone that gets the chance to talk to amazing innovators and founders every single day of the week, I think that the work that you're doing is so incredibly important because obviously we know that the children of today are the future of society and so many things tomorrow. So it's interesting times that we're living in with all of these tech advancements, and a solution like Ahmi is even more important because of the rapid rate of change that we're in. So I'm really grateful for innovators such as yourself being a big part of that revolution and those innovations. So Dhruv, for people who want to see this stuff, you and I talking about it is one thing, but actually seeing the product, I love scrolling through your website, seeing it makes it so real, makes me as hopefully a future parent understand all of the cool ways that this integrates and sets not only me up as a parent, but my children up for success. I'm so excited for listeners to see it. So drop some links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, they can check out www.ahmi.ai. And that's our main webpage. But we also have Instagram, which is ahmi.family, and then our podcast, which is called the Connected Childhood Podcast on both Spotify and Apple Podcast.
Yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find all of those links and resources down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. So definitely check those out. Trust me, you've heard the brain behind this incredible product here in today's episode. Go see it for yourself, and not only to see the product itself, but everything that they've built around Ahmi, from the branding to the messaging for parents and how it benefits everybody involved in this equation. We've talked at length about parents, about the children, and then of course the positive long-term impacts that we're talking about here. Definitely go check out ahmi.ai. You can click right on through from the show notes. Otherwise, Dhruv, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me once again.